Hey everyone, I want to welcome you to this episode of the New Hollywood Podcast. We have Kris Sanchez on today. He is the guy behind Uber Facts, the facts that blow your mind. He's accumulated a mass following across 3 social media platforms of 20 million. He went to SUNY New Paltz in upstate New York, about roughly 45 minutes to an hour north of New York City. Prior to that, he was a counselor, and then something happened and he accidentally stumbled into the world of social media. So I'm really pumped to kick off this interview with you, Kris. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's a beautiful day in Southern California.
It is a beautiful day. That was good. You remember, that was a lot of information.
I'm good at remembering stuff, man. It's really funny because most people actually don't listen in conversations. Most people are actually waiting for the chance to say whatever they want to say, and they never actually really process.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, how do you like get along and meet so many interesting people? I'm like, I'm actually just curious about facts.
Yeah.
Which is a trip. So where I like to start off with everyone is, I want to start off with everyone's origin story. I know you're into superheroes because you mentioned Elektra earlier on.
Yeah, I love Elektra. Thank you for bringing her up.
I had to bring her up. I had to bring her up for you. So we're going to get into your origin story, where you come from and how you ended up stumbling into this crazy world of social media.
All right. Well, it was a hot summer day, July 15th, 1991. And I was born in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. Fast forward 18 years, I am not doing anything in college. I'm on my computer looking up like random shit on Stumble Upon.
What were you majoring in?
Theater.
Okay.
Yeah. But like technically majoring, not actually going to classes and not doing anything that I was supposed to. And I started posting facts on Twitter just so I had one place to find everything, to see everything that I found, and started advertising with other influencers on Twitter. Eventually, Paris Hilton, Kim Kardashian started retweeting it, and that's when the account like blew up.
That's a trip. When did that happen?
December of 2011 was like the day that I hit, or like not the day, the month that I hit 125,000 followers on Twitter, and I was gaining 100,000 a week, and it was.
So you're just shy of 7 years now.
Yeah, that's a long time.
It's a long time. That's like half a career
on the internet. That's crazy.
Okay. Now, were you affected at all by like the Twitter suspensions and crises that I've been like reading about everywhere?
I saw a drop in followers. I think I lost probably about 300,000 followers on Twitter, but there was no dip in engagement or anything like that.
Oh, so you didn't even get your account suspended or blocked or anything?
No, nothing happened to any of my accounts. And like the people who were following that their accounts got suspended or deleted were inactive. So I made it through like the Twitter purge. Was there a Cameron involved in that too?
There is a Cameron back in the day.
I come from that world.
You come from that world. The old Greg world.
Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy.
That's a trip, man. So you stumbled upon all these random facts. How are you finding these facts?
Spending way too much time behind a computer. I mean, now I go through like dig.com, Reddit, Google Alerts, Google News, Apple News, just wherever I can find interesting information.
And what's the process of determining if it's worthy of getting posted on your page or not?
I just have to read it and think it's interesting. If it makes me think, if I question it, that's usually a good sign. If I question and then research and find out that it's true, it's a pretty good fact. If it's unbelievable. Okay.
Have you heard of the one about how cats naturally don't meow in the wild? They are mimicking actually babies crying.
Yeah. I have heard that one.
Is that true or fiction? I've yet to research that, but I've seen that a lot recently.
Yeah, you know, one of those. So I had a book that came out 2 years ago called "Cats Are Capable of Mind Control," and the title was inspired by the fact that cats meow to like manipulate humans. Specifically, they don't really meow at each other, but they meow to sound like babies when they want food or attention.
That tripped me out.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay. So what did you have any celebrities ever reach out to you, and how was like that first experience if they did?
Reach out to
like just the page and just be like, I love this page.
Yes, I have. I got scolded once by Sarah Silverman because I was like using some really shoddy gallery site to monetize my Twitter account a few years ago. And she was like, hey, love your page, but the ads are trash. And I know the money's probably good, but like, come on, your product is way more important than getting paid for it. And I was like, first off, I freaking love you, Sarah Silverman. And I'm like, two, cannot believe you've sent me a DM. Like she slid into my DMs to yell at me. But it was cool. It was like all love, you know?
No, that's a trip. But it's kind of tough because most people are like, I hate people posting these ads on their social media pages that I follow for good content. But
yeah,
it takes a lot of time to read those articles.
Yeah.
And curate and content drive. And if you're not getting paid directly by the social media platform, you need to get paid by somebody else.
You're usually not.
Yeah, it's very rare.
Yeah. It's, you know, I understand why people hate it. And if I didn't have to do it, I wouldn't. But it's a full-time job.
So how did you have like that realization that's going to become your full-time job? You're still in college and where we left on in your story.
Yeah. Well, I had dropped out of college after a year. I actually got kicked out, but I could have stayed if I wanted. And I moved back to New York to pursue theater, and I was working part-time at a camp, and I was tweeting these facts on the side. And eventually this company named Cha-Cha, I don't know if you've heard of them.
Cha-Cha the Wave, Ryan Silverstein's company?
No, they did the question and answer. You would text them a question and they would text you back the answer. It's from like maybe the 2008 era was when it was popular. And they had just gotten into the field of social media monetizing. And they were like, hey, did you know you can make money from your Twitter account by posting links to galleries from our website? And I was like, no, I had no idea. So I started doing that, and then they started paying me, I don't know, I was getting checks for like $700 like a week, which I was making $150 a week or like $200 a week at my part-time job. So this was like a really, really big deal.
Like I got a full-time job doing my hobby.
Yeah. I was like buying shirts all the time. Like I got like a bunch of new shirts. It was crazy. And then after a year of doing both, I wanted to commit full time to my online work. And so I quit my job at the summer camp and started working from home. And I think that became like the beginning of living in a constant state of anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why were you anxious though? You're doing something that you love. You got a pretty steady check of $700, $800.
Like scary, you know? It's scary there was no backup plan. At least I can miss a couple of days of work at camp, or I can slack off, and I know like I wouldn't get fired because I was a pretty good employee, but there is no telling what happens to you online.
No, very true. I mean, that's a big misconception for people in today's society, which is people think that the business owner just gets to hang out or just live their life, but realistically, even if you don't see that person in the office, they're the last person to get paid because you still have to make your payroll before you pay anyone. And realistically, having a job gives you a guarantee. That means you can plan out a lot more of your life. You can pay your rent for the whole year. You know exactly what you're making. You can buy your groceries. But if you run your own business, every expenditure, every change, everything is subject to the market's will and demand.
Yeah, it's great. It's nuts. 1 month you might make, $20,000, $30,000, and the next you might make 10. And you just can't how do you plan around that? So.
Okay. So you're doing this business full time. At this point, did you know like that whole underground Twitter community?
I like all the memers,
all the meme
stuff.
pages, all the growth hackers.
Yeah, I was familiar with them. I had probably worked with some of them when I was paying people to retweet my page, which I didn't know that was like a business. When I thought of the idea, I thought it was like the smartest person in the world. I was like, oh no, this is actually a thing that people are doing. So I got to meet a few of the other people like via direct message and stuff on Twitter through that. But I was never really involved there was some like drama on Twitter back in 2012 between people who own these pages. Like,
what do you mean by like drama? Like physical violence? Or just like
people would just like
online?
Fight. They would just fight with each other. There was always some weird thing happening. And yeah, I don't know. It was just crazy. I wasn't part of any of that.
Do you ever meet those large groups? Because I actually ended up going to a random Twitter meetup with a ton of the growth hacker kids that I just randomly know from like just working in the industry. And it's so funny because they know each other really well. I'm like, oh, wow, how long have you guys been friends? They're like, we've met online about like 7-8 years ago, but this is like our first time actually having a face-to-face discussion.
Yeah.
And like the age discrepancies are so funny. Like there were kids that when they first started off were like 11, 12, 13 years old. And then people that are like in their like late 30s. So it's such a big age discrepancy. It's so funny to me.
You have people like this guy who owns this page called The Notebook, Brandon, who is, I think you might know him, Brandon Hampton.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know, like 40.
I think so, probably.
Almost. And then there are other kids who were like 18 years old. I don't know. It's really weird.
Just barely 18, and they've been pulling in like 6 figures off social media since they were like 13, insane. 14. Yeah. And I'm like, how do you pay attention to school? And like, we had no interest in school.
What school?
They're like, forget about school. Like, I made my living in 120 characters or less.
Yeah. It's so crazy. But it's like cool though. I've met a few people recently, even when like the last few years that I had spoken to when I was 20, 21. And I'm like, whoa, you know, now I'm in LA and they're doing other like influencer events and we all just end up there together. It's a strange, bizarre thing. Like, VidCon just happened recently and I went to like a VidCon after party. And
Which one?
The Rise 9.
My good friend Alex Negretti and Zach James created that.
Negretti.
We have a lot of similar circles. This is too funny.
And we've never met until we met, last week here?
Yeah, like 2 weeks ago here. And then on Saturday at Julia Sharsky from Bad Girls Clubs.
Yeah, at a birthday party.
And then you were also there with a Love Games cast member, and I was with a Love Games cast member.
It's so bizarre.
Such a small world.
And we've never ran into each other before. That's weird.
No, it's a trip. Now, did you have any mentors when you got into the social media game? Or did you develop any over like the period of time that you've been in there?
No.
So you had to figure it out all for yourself.
Yeah.
Now, if you could go back 7 years and give yourself advice on things to avoid or missteps, what would be like 3 pieces of advice that you'd share with anyone?
Never put never send an email and be like, anything you publish online can be posted whenever they want. So I have like tweets that were screenshotted and like exist on the internet. They're really not that juicy, but everything you do is permanent once it goes online.
Okay.
I remember that. Yeah.
That's a key one. What's another one?
Save money. Like
for when the money doesn't come in the next month after you get a $50K check.
Yeah. It's like that jacket can wait.
Okay. And then what did you learn about like creating your own business? Do you ever get hit with taxes for these large checks?
I didn't know what taxes were until like 3 years into doing it. So that is another lesson. I would have been like, taxes are a thing that you're going to have to pay one day and it's going to be expensive if you don't get a jump on it. I don't know anything about running a business. It's so like I had 4 employees a couple of years ago when we did the UberFax app and they were helping bring old tweets over to the app. And I was probably the worst boss in the world. Like I didn't know when people, like I didn't make sure anyone came in on time. They were all great employees. Like I didn't have to do anything, but I must have been the chillest boss ever.
You want a day off? Sure.
Yeah, literally, literally that is what would happen. And it was fine. Like, I don't know anything about running a business.
Now, did you get an office?
I did, and I never went. And I had an office for a month and got rid of it because I liked not going.
I think it makes sense. I think people work actually better in their own homes or at a place of their choosing. Like I work better in a coffee shop than I do at an office.
Really?
Yeah. I get distracted by like just being in a cubicle. I'm not a cubicle person at all. I need to like fill out my day with like activities.
Yeah.
And like usually being around other creative people or going on these random adventures as it seems very haphazard as most of my life looks like on social media, actually inspires me about a lot of the ways that like I run my business or the way that I'm able to consult for my clients on like optimizing their businesses.
Yeah. Do you like enjoy those WeWork spaces and do you find
sometimes, but I feel like that's still an office.
Yeah.
As long if I feel like it's an office, I become unproductive in the sense that you need to really be inspired by what's going on around you. Like for me, like what I like better than a WeWork is working out of like the W Hotel or like the Waldorf, just because they have inspiring architecture and like kind of curating the lifestyle that you want and like enjoy helps reflect in like whatever your end product is.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
How much work do you do from like on your free, you're telling me you manage people.
Yeah. So my background is I started off as a celebrity talent manager. And at that point, I didn't really ever go to our office. I always longboarded around my house on one board and I'd go from one side to the other and I'd literally be rolling calls for like 5 hours a day.
Wow.
From a longboard. And I'd trip people out. They're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I have like my assistant on the line who's going to take the notes, handle the cal invites, and I'm just going to spitball with you. But like being in that state, like, dude, like when you're on a board, even though it's not in the ocean, it is still moving and you can still fall and you can still hurt yourself.
Yeah.
But it gets your mind like functioning at like a higher level, at least for me, that I'm much more open towards like ideas. And like, I think a lot of people in an office environment, if your idea differs with mine, if I might have seniority over you, you might not tell me because you don't want to offend my ego. And you're gonna have to sit next to me every day. Whereas my opinion is, I don't care about being the smartest person in the room. I want to know what the best possible idea, what the best possible result is, because at the end of the day, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't really make sense. Or if it doesn't build the brand, it doesn't make sense.
If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense.
Yep. Snoop Dogg, I think, said that.
Oh, did he?
I think he did.
Oh, I want to get that tattooed on me.
If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You get the dollar sign. And
yeah, the emoji.
Like yeah, that's the way you got to do it, man.
That's great.
Now, in this social world, you've transitioned from Twitter to Instagram. Were you a late jumper switching over, or are you like the guy that's like at the cutting edge of all these social media platforms coming out? Because it's more and more each year.
Yeah. I got into Instagram pretty early on. Like I was able to get the handle that I wanted and my full name, which is, that is
rare.
Hard to do. Yeah. So I was pretty early. I got the accounts early, but I didn't really utilize them until a few years ago. So I'm only at like 1.5 million followers on Instagram, which is not a lot compared to the other pages, but it is my personal favorite platform. All the other ones I don't really use. I don't really use like Tumblr or Snapchat that much. I think since Kylie Jenner tweeted that she doesn't use it.
You're like, I'm over it.
No one else.
Kylie doesn't use it. I'm not using it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, she's a billionaire now, so she makes good decisions.
I think that's a trip. You said only 1.5 million followers on Instagram. I think I'm only at 1.5 million.
A lot of people have like 1 million followers on Instagram. Have you ever realized that? So many people have 1 million followers.
There's tons.
Like, you can go like into a club here and like, oh, I have 1 million followers. And 10 people are like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And I don't know any of these people, Well,
it was actually really funny. I was at a social media party for Halloween like 2-3 years ago. And LA is one of those amazing places where like literally everyone is someone. Like everyone is extremely talented. Like there's so many amazing singers, dancers, actors. I'm like, how do people not know about you? Like I see you performing in this dive bar. Like, well, like I have a decent following on social media. It's like 350,000, right? And we were at this party and like pretty much everyone there had something that they did. They were either a big name in business, they had their own businesses, they're a celebrity or an influencer of some sort. But for the most part, nobody really felt like the need to bring that up. And I remember there's the favorite place where you can tell like the character of people is situations where people can't really do anything for them. And it reminds me of an old Muhammad Ali quote, which is like, I judge people by like how they treat the waiter. Because if I were in that situation, I wasn't Muhammad Ali, they would treat me the same way that they treat the waiter. Yeah. And there's this line for a bathroom. I was probably like the second person in line. There's a kid behind me and there's one guy in front of me. And everyone's just patiently waiting. It's a long, long line. And these two girls cut ahead of the line and go in front of the guy. And he's like, I'm sorry. And they're like, no, we need to cut. We're kind of famous. The girl's like, yeah, we're really famous. Like I have like 20,000. And the other girl's like, yeah, and I have like 15 on IG. And then this kid's like, what? He's just mind babbled. He has no idea. Like, what the fuck just happened? Did she just tell me she has 20,000 followers?
Yeah.
The kid behind me immediately gets out of line. He's like, listen, I know that's great that you have like 20, but like, I have over 1 million on every single platform, and I'm a respectable human
I'm
being,
in line waiting,
and I'm waiting in line for the bathroom. And I really respect that kid. It's so much work just because like the faces of these people that are just cutting this huge line of everyone. It doesn't matter who's in that line. All that matters is you just need to respect like everyone around you, because legitimately, if those people were nicer, if they waited in that line, the person in front of them or the person behind them could have been a great person to do a collab with to grow their own following.
Totally.
You know, just from a selfish, self-interest perspective, you could have made a friend in this line. You just cut that line and you missed that opportunity to bond with someone for 20 minutes.
Burn the line, burn the bridges.
You burn the bridges. And I think that's a thing that most people don't really understand. Do you ever get a lot of people that hit you up and demand with the sense of like authority or privilege that they deserve to have their fact posted on your page?
Yeah. Yeah, all the time.
How do you deal with that?
Now I usually don't go through the messages very often because it's a deep, dark place. Like people can be kind of crazy, but it was hard at first starting something for myself that's supposed to be a hobby. And obviously as it becomes more popular, it's really freaking cool that so many people enjoy it as well. But, I began to feel like I was losing it. I was no longer doing it for me. I had to do it for a lot of other people. And at first it was hard to deal with, but eventually it's kind of just like everyone thinks they're like owed something, you know.
It's like a birthright.
Yeah. Or it's the strange thing about posting facts is that I'm not finding anything that other people couldn't find relatively easily if they tried to. You know,
search 100 interesting facts or watch Jaden Smith get his mind blown.
Oh,
have you seen that video?
Yes.
It's one of my favorite videos with interesting facts.
So good. It was an amazing video.
What's your overall favorite fact that you've learned since you started this journey?
My overall favorite fact is that after a male bee has sex, his testicles explode and he dies.
That is so sad.
And you can I don't know how much free time you have, but I have a lot. And if you go on YouTube, you can Google or search male bee climax. This is the weirdest thing. And it sounds like a popping sound that you can actually hear in the video. It's terrible. It's a terrible way to go out.
It's like, why would you ever want to do that?
They don't. It's their only job. Drones, their only job is to mate. And then they die.
So they live their whole life to bust one nut.
In captivity. In captivity.
Damn. That's a bad jail sentence.
Yeah, the worker bees are all female. So 2018.
But does that kind of trip you out? Like, this is something that trips me out about like just people in general, is in almost every other species, the women are really the providers. Like men pretty much in like all species, like from lions, just hang out. It's like, I fought with this couple of guys a couple times and, you know, I won. So now I'm the king of the jungle and I just chill.
Yeah. What a weird role. Like they don't do anything, male lions, and then they kill male cubs so they don't take over the pride.
Yeah, like that's literally their only job.
And the girls have to like have the babies. They have to find the food. They have to like, it's nuts.
And then bring the food back to this dude.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I'm sitting there, I'm like, the least the guy could do is at least come over to the carcass of like the gazelle that they took all the hard work of hunting and capturing.
Right. I wonder if they like don't eat. They don't even eat first too, though. I think it's strange. Like I think female lions wait until like the male eats.
I don't know.
And then they eat after. I don't know.
That's such a trip. Oh my God, bro. That would trip me out. That would be so gnarly.
Yeah.
So if you could be any animal, which animal would you be and why?
Ooh. Oh, I think I'd want to be like a sea otter because they're really cute and furry and they're great swimmers. Like you can be a land animal and a sea animal and they're just fucking adorable. Who doesn't like sea otters?
Okay.
Have you ever met someone who's like, I don't like sea otters?
Possibly. Actually, the other day I was in Venice Beach and I saw a sign that said, "Stop Canada's #1 like hidden like thing So I had to investigate. I'm like, what is Canada hiding from all of us? It's like a seal. It's like a seal clubbing thing that happens in Canada all the time. And they're like murdering off all these seals.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, I had a Canadian EDM producer staying with me who's at the beach with us. So we immediately confront him and we're like, hey, what's going on in Canada with the seals? We're a bit concerned. He's like, yeah, it's honestly one of those things that most people don't talk about, but there's a lot of seals being killed in Canada. And it's so gnarly. Like, what did a seal ever do to people? And
I know, to club
B, why is
it.
no one ever talking about it? It just, I mean, I don't think they're actually clubbing it. I think they're probably like hunting them.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But I think that's a big problem in like just society in general is people are just killing things for no reason whatsoever. It's not to like eat. And I think that problem is translating over to different areas of the way people live their lives, which is the obesity problems. And everyone pretty much has diabetes. And I think a lot of it comes from overconsumption.
Yeah. And the availability of, like, we can get whatever we want now. I was just having this conversation the other day where it's like, oh, I want a burger. I'm just going to have one delivered to me.
Postmates.
Literally I'm going to sit here until the burger flies into my mouth. It's like nuts, you know?
You don't have to leave your couch.
You don't have
anymore.
to work for our resources, which is just, I wouldn't have made it if I was like an early human. I don't think I would have. You have to like go out there and like run and
kill, survive, gather.
It's nuts.
It's a trip.
What animal would you be?
So it depends on the day and how I'm feeling. I'll go over like my top 3, depending on who I'm speaking to. It's either a Chihuahua,
okay,
because they have a big heart, and they also have like this undefeatable attitude. I had a pet Chihuahua. Her name was Lola, and she was a princess. And that little dog would scare huskies, German shepherds with all 6 pounds of her fury.
Yeah.
Because she just would bark and like be aggressive. And like, it was just like the big dog would look at her and like, I don't really want to mess with this little dog because she's got a crazy look in her eyes.
Yeah.
At 6 pounds, she might have some like hidden advantage, maybe like a knife or a gun.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
When you're that small, you got to have like, you got to put up a front.
You got to put up a front.
Just to scare people off. Because if it comes to a battle, you're probably going to lose. So scare them.
So that's one. The other one is a peacock. 1, extremely memorable. 2, they're gorgeous to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And C, they're ferocious. Because I was looking at mansions for a company I was working at for a property. And I remember we got into the property and the realtor got so scared. He saw this peacock. The peacock was like kind of running at him. And it was like a guard peacock that the previous tenant kind of had. And I'm like, a guard peacock is like when you're at that next level of success.
Yeah, right.
You don't need a guard dog. I'm going to have a peacock guard my home.
They have some at like the LA Zoo and they are vicious.
They're vicious.
You get next to them and it's like, wah!
Yeah, they open up their tail. They're like, I'm beautiful and I will lay you out.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like, it's one of those species where like the males are like the pretty ones.
Yeah. I mean, that's most animals, man. Like most male animals in society groom and spend their whole life to find a mate.
Yeah.
And in our society, like, oh, we throw on a t-shirt, put on jeans, take a mint, maybe brush our teeth.
Yeah, right.
You know, run some water through our hair. And women have to get dressed up. And it's kind of a trippy, like, conundrum in society.
Yeah.
So, like, we're the only species that has, like, this weird gender inequality in, like, favor of men, whereas, like, almost every other species, women are much more dominant and lead the whole society.
Yeah. It's unfortunate how, like, I don't know, especially in now, current times, when we're really making an effort to be inclusive and treat people equally, you think about, like, we're both men, right?
Yeah.
We're pretty fucking lucky, you know? Like, it's, I think, kind of easy to be a guy.
In a lot of regards, yeah.
And I wish I didn't feel that way, but it's
But you're
true.
still a minority guy, so you still have some obstacles.
I am still a minority. Yeah. It was crazy growing up in, like, I grew up in Brighton Beach, which is a completely, well, not completely because I wasn't Russian, but mostly predominantly Russian
Eastern
neighborhood.
Europeans that immigrated over here after World War II.
That's what happened?
A lot of it. And a lot of them actually weren't necessarily Jewish, but a lot of them claimed to be Jewish when they came over because like that's a quick way to kind of get through at that point because of what Hitler was doing.
That's interesting.
And I learned a lot more about Brighton Beach because of the movie Lord of War.
I've never heard of that movie.
Lord of War is a Nicolas Cage movie where he was a gun runner.
And it takes place in Brighton Beach?
He's from Brighton Beach. So
Okay.
like the intro monologues cover like his family's origin story into Brighton Beach. And I Googled into like a couple of like, sometimes when I see things in movies, like I'm not sure if this is a real thing. So I need to deep dive a little bit into those sort of things. Like the Janet Smith thing, I think it was like the difference between a human and a banana is like 2%.
Yeah, with the DNA. Yeah.
And I Googled into that and I was like, that tripped me out. I'm like, wow,
yeah.
that's a fact.
So that explains why a lot of because there were a lot of Jewish people in Brighton Beach, and they're Russian, and I thought that was like common. And apparently, I have some Russian friends out here, and I'm like, no, it's not.
No, that's kind of a trip, man.
Yeah.
The third animal I would be is a caterpillar, because a caterpillar evolves into a beautiful butterfly.
Yeah.
You got to constantly be progressing. I don't think enough people realize that the station or the place that you're born into in life doesn't define who you have to be. At the end of the day, a lot of us get put like labels on ourselves because of things that other people, friends, family have told us that we need to be.
Yeah.
And we live in a self-actualizing prophecy of, I'm told I'm going to be this way. Well, that's the only way it can be.
Right.
I wanted to be in entertainment. I wanted to move to Los Angeles. I wanted to, be a thought leader in business. And it wasn't easy in a lot of those regards. In a lot of regards, I'm still progressing and working my way up. But if you gradually put in that intention and you do the work, you get incrementally, slightly by a little bit better and better, and you learn and you grow. And I think we're all constantly growing.
Yeah.
You probably weren't the best at 120 characters or less year one. But I bet right now, if any thought or anything you want to say, you can get it down.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. I feel like when you expect or at least know that you can do more, it doesn't matter. It could be harder to get certain places depending on where you grew up and where you're from. But when you allow opportunities to present themselves and you have like this vision, you can just find a way to make it happen. It might be tough, but people are often just confined by like self-imposed prisons. I'm expected to be this way. I'm expected to stay here my entire life because this is where I grew up and everyone from my area stays. Yeah.
Well, that's a trip. So I assume you've met a lot of interesting people throughout your journey doing Uber Facts. Who's somebody that's really interesting that you met up with?
Oh man. This is hard. I got to have lunch once with Biz Stone, who was a co-founder of Twitter. And he's actually like a really cool guy. I got like a bit of an Elon Musk sort of vibe from him. Off the top of my head, I think he might be the coolest person that I've met just because he's behind something so massive.
He give you the blue check mark?
But he didn't. No.
He did it?
He didn't give you the blue check mark. I had it before, but he did help me when literally that day my account got hacked. I was in sequester for a reality show and they let me leave to go have lunch with him, and I get back and somehow my account had been hacked and I was able to email him and he got it back for me. If you Google UberFacts hack, you'll see some articles and they posted some crazy shit from the account.
That's a trip. What reality show were you on?
I was almost on Big Brother a few years ago. I was an alternate for someone who actually made it on the show.
That's a trip.
Yeah.
You ever consider going on Love Games?
No.
No? You just know that whole squad?
I just know a few people who are on there. No, Big Brother was like one of the two reality shows that I would have done. The first being Real World, which I was recruited for.
Okay. Same casting company.
Yeah. I was recruited because I was like at a bar, but I was 19. So you had to be 21 for that season. But Big Brother is really cool. I watched the show. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all.
I am.
Yeah. It's like cool, corny.
It's kind of a trip. I mean, I think viewing life in a bubble of like people in those situations is it's so tough to get like an idea of like what actually happened. Because the way that those contracts and stuff are positioned together is any of those things can be recut up and re-engineered.
Yeah. And it always is. It's like, you know, we have some mutual friends who were on the Bad Girls Club, and none of those girls are like that in real life that I've met. Like they're all the sweetest, nicest people, but you're put in an environment where, like Big Brother, you're living in a house. If you win, you're in one house for almost 100 days. You're not allowed to leave. And it really brings out the worst in you. And unfortunately, people watch that and they think that is who they are in real life. And it's like, that's probably who you are under the pressure of having to do something crazy.
I think it's a Lord of the Flies situation. 100%.
I haven't read that book, but...
So it's basically a concept like when people are kind of just put in these positions of like left to their own devices, kind of sequestered and without like any rule or law, innately a lot of people end up doing like bad things just because it gives them some sort of advantage.
Yeah.
And I think in those situations, it's gamified experiences. So obviously people have an innate desire to win because there's a reward or a prize at the end of that tunnel. And if you got like the opportunity to get more screen time, that can benefit your overall career. And I think a lot of people are willing to blur what the lines of what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do on camera for that check.
Yeah. And it's definitely encouraged throughout the entire process, throughout the entire audition process. It was encouraged to be like, to be a pretty cutthroat player. And I'm sure once they get into the house, they do the same thing in the diary room and in confessionals. When you watch those other reality shows, they want you to give them that.
That's a trip. Now, are there any like tricks that you use to grow or like things that you've realized were ways that you were able to grow your social media accounts well?
I noticed a big change on Twitter when I started tweeting more often. And I think the account got so large so quickly because I started tweeting 4 times an hour. And just the more content you put out there, the more content's being shared, the more people see it, the faster the account grows. And it's the same with Instagram too. If I only post once a day on Instagram for a few days, I'll get probably like 46,000 profile visits in a week, and maybe I'll gain 100 followers. If I post 8 times a day, which I know sounds like a lot.
Sounds so many times.
It sounds like a lot.
Are you hiding these posts after a while or?
No, thanks to like Instagram's new algorithm, which sucks for
It's rough right now.
certain reasons. Like if you can't guarantee that something will be seen, but at least if you're putting out 8 images in a day, the best ones will be seen by the people who engage with your page the most. So they're not necessarily seeing 8 in a row. You know, maybe they'll see a couple tomorrow that I posted today or something like that. But it still helps the account gain followers.
That's a trip. Now, have you noticed any conversion between your Uberflex page and your personal page? Do you see a lot of crossover or not really?
Not a ton, but it's some crossover. Not a ton of crossover because I'm removed from the brand aside from the few things that I'm actually doing. I do videos for the page and now I do the podcast. So people who like those things will cross over and start following me in my personal account. But the people who just want to like know about...
Have their mind blown with an interesting fact here and there?
Yeah, like some weird popcorn fact. Don't care about the fact that I'm like on a beach.
Just like feed me your facts.
Yeah. And
Make it easy.
I don't blame them. I personally don't use social media very often for myself. Like I'm barely on Twitter from my personal account. I barely log on. I usually do most of the scheduling through Buffer or something like that, which I love Buffer app. Do you know about Buffer app?
I love Buffer. It's great.
Life-changing. I mean, thank you, Buffer.
It allows you to position yourself so that you don't physically have to be at a computer every couple hours doing these things manually yourself.
Yeah.
You can pre-plan it.
I remember the days when when I first started, so the name Uberfacts I got because I was using the Uber social app on a BlackBerry and I would have to tweet each fact manually and then scheduling changed everything. But yeah, I don't use it personally as often.
Okay. Now, do you think it's because it's like your job? Because like regardless of how great you are at something, like if I was a professional skateboarder or if I longboarded professionally or any of those things that I enjoy to do as hobbies right now, I don't think I'd want to do it in my time off.
Yeah, I guess so. I have a bit of an aversion to like my phone. I don't really like, I don't enjoy being on it like at all. I have to like respond to texts, and I am on Instagram because I post manually, and then I'll go through like my friend's stuff. But I would rather just like listen to music or play a video game or something, do something else than be so engrossed in someone else's life.
I mean, if you read some studies right now, psychologists say that for like kids that grew up with phones, it's kind of like a part of their brain. So if they're separated from their phone, if the battery is dead, like they feel like a piece of them is actually like missing.
Yeah, and definitely like loneliness. Like we've become dependent on them to feel less lonely, and we're social creatures. So even just getting a text message, like there's like a spark of dopamine that's released in your brain, and it makes you feel better.
Do you think people communicate better with the advent of cell phone technology and email, or do you think they communicate worse?
I think that it's sometimes easier to be honest if you're not facing the person. You know, let's say like on a deep level, like you're in a relationship or something like that, or there's something you don't like. Sometimes it's harder to be honest about your feelings when someone's sitting
2 feet away from you.
Yeah. But as opposed to if you're texting, which I don't think is like the best way of communicating, but I do think it helps sometimes to get a point across where you can thoughtfully choose what it is that you want to say. It also makes it a lot easier to not tell the truth. But I don't know. I feel like for me, it hasn't been a bad thing. Like I don't mind communicating via text.
I hate text messages.
Really?
No, dude. So many things get lost. So like I studied a lot of stuff around like human psychology and the way that like we interact, but also like linguistics and the way that that kind of works. Mm-hmm. And do you realize that how much of what we say isn't actually the word content of what we say? It's the pitch, the tone, the inflection, like the how we say it.
Right.
So like one text that just conveys the piece of information could come off as very argumentative or passive or vague or intentionally misguided purely based on the way that the person that reads it interprets it or views it and the voice that they read it in their head, because we all hear a voice when we're reading something.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a really trippy thing. But I also think that with the advent of technology, like 2 years ago, if we wanted to grab like dinner on Tuesday and I scheduled it with you on like the landline phone, Tuesday at the time that we planned on grabbing dinner, you're probably going to show up at exactly that time, because there's no way to tell me that you're running late. Right. It'd be like rude not to. But nowadays we have so much communication with people that people forget to cancel. People forget, like everyone's consistently late to things. Yeah. And it just is a cop out, and then you get overwhelmed with like the amount of information. I think that's kind of a trippy reason, like that I'm surprised that you said that like you like text messages, because you're like, I don't like to be on my phone that much. And like, dude, it stresses me out looking at my phone. I'm like, I have 300 to 400 text messages a day.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That is nuts.
I have 300 to 400 text messages a day. I get between 50 to 200 emails a day. And I get about 50 to 75 Instagram DMs per day.
That's too much.
It's trippy,
I text
right?
with like maybe like five people, you know, like my close friends and like Colin.
Colin's the best though.
Yeah. And that's so it's easy for me to communicate that way. A weird thing too is like, what's with like the compulsion to like want to say LOL and stuff? Do you ever feel like if
it's
you
a filler word?
Yeah. Do you ever feel like if you don't use it, you might seem like too serious if you don't add like some exclamation points or something like that?
Yeah, dude, it trips me out because like I'm very like blunt and direct about the things I say. I say exactly what I mean. I say exactly how I feel about something. But in most responses, if you don't put it in an LOL, I feel like there's a social judgment that's about to be placed on me for like not getting the humor in the situation or like not throwing in an emoji sometimes. Like sometimes if people send too many emojis, then I send like 4 or 5 emojis. But like as a guy, I don't really know what I'm doing with emojis. It's kind of like, I feel like my emojis are slightly better than my mom's emojis because my mom sends me like inappropriate emojis for things.
Like
all
the
time.
eggplant. Like what kind of?
No, like my mom's always like kissy face.
Oh, I thought you
it's
meant
all the
like-
time because like anytime like I'm with somebody, they're like, "Who's that girl that you have coded in your phone as mom? Like, why are you lying to me?" I'm like, "No, that's literally my mother." It's like, "Ashwin, are you alive? I hope you had a good day." And it's just like very mom type text.
Yeah.
But the emojis just don't correspond with the mothers would be sending.
Yeah, that's funny. GIFs have like changed the game too. Do you say GIF or GIF?
I say GIF.
You say GIF.
Yeah.
I say
No, it's a GIF. I don't know.
the guy.
Now I'm confused.
The guy was like, it's supposed to be pronounced like the peanut butter, like Jiffy, like Jif. But I feel like GIF is the most
Yeah, I
common
feel like GIF is
pronunciation.
actually
But it
probably
never
real.
felt right to me. But I really appreciate those because like you can communicate sass in real time. Like it's hard, let's say I want to like leave like a sassy text. It might not read that way, but then I just need to use a GIF of Rihanna and boom,
She's queen.
boom. There you go.
That's
Eye
a
roll.
trip, dude. Now, with all the stuff that you've learned on social media, you've made that your full-time business. What are you focusing on nowadays?
Focusing on the podcast, focusing on trying to like take it easy. I've been very like go since I moved out here, and then I moved to Toronto for a year, and I was like traveling back and forth, and I don't want to say easily stressed out, but it might be unfortunately true. Like I get stressed kind of easily. So I've been trying to like just focus on like chilling out and
Living life.
yeah.
You're trying to be a life enthusiast like myself.
I'm trying to be a life enthusiast.
I'm trying to make that a thing. I want everyone to just start being life enthusiasts.
I think I'm gonna like add that to like my like
You should.
Instagram thing. Yeah.
You definitely should. It's like the best way because like most people define themselves by like either their occupation or these other labels that people put on themselves. But really, like we're all on our own race. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. And we all have that opportunity to like try and make a little bit of what we want to make happen.
Yeah.
Like what ended up making you decide that you're going to go to Toronto for a year? That seems like such a random place.
I was dating someone who lived there, and we had dated for 4 months, and then I moved to another country.
How did that happen? Did you have to get a visa?
No, because they give you 3 months on a travel visa when you use your passport. So, and I was coming back to LA or New York because it's pretty close, like once a month or something like that. So I was able to be out there on a travel visa, but it was a cool experience. I love Toronto. Have you ever been?
Yeah, a ton of times. I have a ton of family in Mississauga.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Which part of Toronto are you in?
Liberty Village.
Okay.
Do you know where?
Yeah,
This
dude.
is-
I've been all over, man. 38 states and like 4 continents now.
Wow.
Yeah, I've toured all over, and it's really interesting because like by traveling around, I've learned that as much as the differences that we think between people there are, everyone's pretty simple when it comes down to like the root things that motivate most people.
Yeah.
Most people just want to be happy and they just want to go about their lives and realize that like other people aren't a threat. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people in today's day and age need to do is forget what media says about like another group of people. If you think people in the South are racist, go down to the South and meet people in the South. They're very nice. I've actually felt much more welcome in the South than I did in the Northeast a lot of times. And that's something that most people are tripped out by. They're like, what do you mean you felt like that? I'm like, I don't know. I met a lot of very nice people that went out of their way to help me with random issues that would happen with like a car that's old and beat up on these like trips that I went on with like different artists. And I think it's one of those things that we all go into things with a bias.
Yeah.
And you just have to kind of like live life and just see where it takes you.
Where is like the coolest place that you think you've been?
I love Florence, Italy. I went there for study abroad when I was a sophomore in college. Ended up meeting a promoter, started promoting, worked with a lot of like fashion brands, bringing people in, getting them style, getting them clothes, doing tour guiding. And that really inspired me because that was like the first time in my life that I realized that I don't really need to necessarily know how to do something. If I have the dream or the ambition or the work ethic to do something and I try and I get better each time I do it, then I can do it.
Yeah.
So from that point on, I just started doing things. Like I was like, oh, cool. I want to learn how to do this. let's just try it out and see what works and what doesn't work and get a little bit better day to day.
Dude, that's awesome.
It was deep. It was like a trippy experience.
How long were you there for?
I was supposed to be there for a month. I ended up staying for like 3.
Wow.
And that like inspired like a lot of the stuff I did in like the nightlife business when I came back. And from there, that like really gave me a lot of confidence in like the entertainment space that you can do a lot of interesting stuff. Everyone just kind of has a dream that they wanted to make happen. Everyone's just a regular person just trying to get the same things. And I think that's one of those things that most people don't negate. There's nothing that makes us individually special or better at something. You have to try.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, what's your podcast about?
My podcast, so it's called Factually Speaking, and each episode is about a different topic. We did an episode about Disney. We've done one about Pixar. I had a matchmaker on another one. And it's a way to like have a conversation, for me at least, about some of the things that I find online. I found something interesting about Steve Jobs or Apple, and we just have like a conversation about stuff. I know that's not like very basic, not very specific.
What did you learn from the matchmaker?
God, what did I learn from him? He told me about like how he goes about his business, like how they charge. They charge people different fees depending on what it is that they're looking for, and like how many options. The more options you have, the cheaper they are to work. The cheaper their price is for working with you.
What do you mean by options?
Like potential matches. So they usually charge people more if they have fewer potential matches. If you're like an older person, you might pay $5,000 for a certain amount of time for a month or two. If you're like a younger, pretty person in LA, maybe you get away with $2,000 or $2,500 or something like that. So that was cool. His name was Steve Ward. He was the host of Tough Love on VH1.
Okay.
Do you remember that show?
Yeah, I do.
Isn't that a crazy era?
Such a trip.
It was the best VH1 era of all time.
I actually think I know another girl that was on that show.
Really?
Yeah. No, I know a lot of random reality stars. Just from like, I don't know. I like I told you before we started filming, I go out about 5 nights a week. And it's purely because I love people and I love learning new stuff. And like, I love listening to like their story and their journey. I think that allows me to really just be much more holistically knowledgeable. People are like, how do you know all these random things about life? And I'm like, I just ask a lot of people a lot of random questions and they give me answers.
Absorbing. It's like a sea sponge.
Yeah, dude. I'm like SpongeBob SquarePants, just learning new things every day.
That's cool. That's good though. That's definitely, I think that's how I met a lot of the people that I know out here, was just through going out and being a, extroverted person. It's easy to meet people in LA. Did you meet a lot of these people when you moved out here?
I pretty much moved out here with like, I had somewhat of a network from like having done stuff in the entertainment space, but I had to rebuild a lot of stuff because it's years in between, and LA is a very transient place.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was like, just going out, introducing myself, telling people what I wanted to do, and then just finding interesting ways to bring value. And I think that's the biggest thing that most people don't realize is most people just want you to say your name.
Yeah.
And realize that you're not a serial killer.
Yeah.
That's basically like the two things that most people are looking for is like, hey, my name is Ashwin. I don't murder people.
Yeah. That's good.
I'm a nice person. And that like ends up like, it's a way to bond with people is just telling them your name. Most people are so afraid to approach people that they don't know, but you never know who could have changed the entire course of your life.
Yeah.
Or who could have helped you avoid a lot of mistakes along that way if you just ask the right question.
Yeah. It's important also to have you need a lot of confidence to do that, which is, clearly you got it.
I mean, that's more of a learned skill than anything else, man.
Yeah.
Like once you realize that people don't have necessarily bad intentions for other people, you get okay at it. I think a lot of stuff is just people psych themselves out in their own head.
Totally.
About like, oh my God, this person would never want something from you or never be interested in having a conversation. But I think that most people are interested in like other people's like own flaws, because everyone has their own flaws. Everyone has their own issues. Everyone has their own like fears.
Totally. It's so weird that we like there's so much pressure that we put on ourselves as humans, like to look for meaning where there might not be any, or to worry about these problems that are only problems because we've made them issues, you know?
Or hidden subtext, like, why did that person not respond to my text?
Yeah.
They literally might not even have their phone. There's not
that's
a
a
hidden
big one.
meaning sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. That rings true to some personal stuff.
Trust me, I'm guilty of it too. Trust me, sometimes I've gotten texts and I'm like, how did that person not see it?
Yeah. But yeah.
All right. Well, I really want to thank you for coming on the show today, Kris.
Thank you for having me. This is cool being on like the other side of the table.
I know it's a scary side of the table, right?
It is actually.
You're viewing all the stuff on the opposite side of the street.
I don't get nervous often, but I feel like I was a little nervous.
Now, where do people find you on social media, and where can they download your podcast?
They can download Factually Speaking or subscribe to it on the CastBox app and everywhere else that they have podcasts. You can follow UberFacts on Instagram, like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter. And my personal is Kris, Kris Sanchez on Instagram.
So easy.
Yeah.
Super,
I got that.
super
I got in when I got that name. Like I got in early enough to Instagram to just get my
That's amazing.
full name. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank each of you guys for tuning in today to this episode of the New Hollywood Podcast. It's your host, Ashwin Jacob. You can follow us at New Hollywood on Instagram. We're going to be pretty much everywhere that you can download a podcast, current or in the future, just because we want to be everywhere. So it's going to be Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, SoundCloud. Thank you for coming in, tuning in and listening each week. Kris shared some great tidbits about his adventures in social media. Be sure to subscribe to his podcast as well. Thank you all for listening.